Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaur
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Jaya Shri Prabhu Nityananda Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajikacharya, Ashototara, Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajikacharya, Ashototara, Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Amacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Skoho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Brindavan Dham Ki. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki. Gangamai Yamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhakti Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami.
Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Kala Gala. Kala Nakashi Purvashara. Nakashi
Nakama Buddha Shinga Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Shabakita Jahare Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Nishingare, Jaya Nishingare, Nishingare, Jaya Nishingare.
Jaya Nashingane, Jaya Nashingane, Jaya Nashingane, Jaya Nashingane.
Jaya Balatmara, Jaya Bhaktapala, Balatmara, Jaya Bhaktapala,
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jai, Jai, Jai,
Jai.
Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Welcome, all the devotees. Thank you for joining us today for our Sunday Feast program. Out there, those that are there on Zoom, as well as our Philadelphia YouTube channel. This is our second week that we've gone back to the virtual program, and we definitely do appreciate everyone's cooperation. Certainly, we all wish we were here in the temple together, chanting, dancing live, having each other's association. But we've been through this before, and hopefully it won't last as long as the first time, and that we'll be back in touch with each other as soon as possible. Today is the first day of Sunday school since the winter break, so that is also virtual. Each Sunday school has their own individual class room ID. It was put in the newsletter. If you are a parent and you want to get your child into the virtual Sunday school, just refer to the newsletter. I believe Mother Shobharati also sent the information out to each individual class as well. But that should be starting momentarily. I'm going to give a quick darshan around of the deities, a close-up of the deities. So we're trying to give you the feel as close as we can to the actual temple experience. We'll come over and we're going to start with His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So request all the devotees to go off of mute, and we can all glorify Srila Prabhupada and their lordships. His Divine Loving Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Jai.
Parama Karuna, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki.
Jai. Jai.
Shri Jagannath, Shri Baladev, Subhadra Maharani ki.
Jai.
Your most beautiful lordship, Shri Shri Radha Sharat Bihari ki.
Jai. Jai.
Okay, so Darshan will be open at the temple starting at 6 o'clock this evening. I know that there are devotees that are eager to come and have see the Lord. So that'll begin tonight from 6 o'clock to 7:15. In addition, anybody who gets their milk from Gita Nagari they can come by at that time to pick up their milk. We'll have it outside ready for your pickup. Unfortunately, at this time, we won't have any assembly. So there is an artik at 6:15, but you'll be able to come for Darshan, but we won't be sitting and having Kirtan together. At this time, we're going to go to our Bhagavad-Gita discourse for the evening. Originally, we had His Grace Haryashtra Prabhu was going to speak. He had to cancel last minute. So tonight I'll be speaking on the Bhagavad-Gita. We're in the 4th chapter, text number 22, transcendental knowledge. So I'm just going to switch over from this phone into the computer. So just give me a moment. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Sorry for that brief pause. I'd like to give a special, I just see now the names of the devotees that have joined tonight. Hare Krishna Balabhadra Prabhu. Welcome. And so all the assembled devotees. We are going to
Hare
chant.
Krishna, Drona. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So nice of you to join us and be here with us tonight. We're going. Okay, great. Thank you, Suhit Prabhu. So we have our Suhit Prabhu is our Kirtan leader during this quarantine for the Kirtans. So we're very grateful that he comes and chants. Can everybody hear the Kirtan okay? I'm curious during the
once in a while it went little off, but it was okay.
Still here. Okay. So we'll try to work on that a little bit. See what we can do to arrange that. I just don't know because I'm on this side of it. So any feedback that you have, please let me know. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Sharad Bihari Radha Sharad Bihari Radhe Jaya Radha Sharad Bihari Radha Sharad Bihari Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladev Jaya Subhadra Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladev Jaya Subhadra Jaya Goranitai 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 Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai, 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 Jaya Goranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashotatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Rajacharya Ashotatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip
Jai.
Ki
Jai.
Jagannath Ki
Jai.
Yamunamai Ki Bhakti
Jai.
Devi Tulsi Devi Ki
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Transcendental
Jai.
Distribution Ki
Jai.
Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Nitai Gaur
Jai.
Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
All glories to the feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Hare
Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swamini Tinamani Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shradatmane Shri Gorakurna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Once again, good evening to all the devotees that have joined. Thank you so much for coming into sharing each other, our virtual space. Tonight we were going to continue on with our study of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita this chapter is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. Last week we heard a very wonderful class by Her Grace Archana Bhakti Mataji, talking about many different topics, but very, very nicely touched on the part of karma and becoming free from our reactions of karma. So this verse tonight continues along that line. We're going to bring it up on the screen. We're going to have everybody, I'll chant it 3 times, and then the audience, each of you will get an opportunity to chant as well, if you would like. Let's see. I can share my screen if it's not going to come up. See if everybody can see. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu.
Chapter 4, text 22. Yadricha labasantushto dvandvatito vimartsara samasidhav asidhaucha kritvapi na nibhadyate. Yadricha labasantushto dvandvatito vimatsara samhasadhav asidhaucha kritvapi na libhadyate. Yadricha labasantushto dvandvatito vimatsara samasidhav asidhaucha kritvapi na libhadyate.
Yadricha labasantusto dvandvatito vimatsara samasiddha vasiddhaucha kritvapi na nibhajyate.
Yadricha. Go ahead, Mataji.
Mataji, please go ahead.
Yadricha lavasantushto dvandvatito vimatsara samasiddhau asiddhau cha kritvapi na nibhadyate. Thank you, Mataji.
Yadricha santushto dvandvatito vimatsaraha samahasiddhava siddhau cha kritvapi na nibadhyate.
Hare Krishna. Yadricha labha santushto द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समः सिद्धा असिद्धाः च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते.
Hare Krishna. Yadriksha labha santusto dvandatito vimatsaraha samasiddhav asiddhav cha kritva pina nibadhyate. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else like to go ahead?
I can recite.
Please, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Krishna Kirtan, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yadruchalava santushta dvandvatita vimatsaraha samaha siddha asiddhau cha krutvapi na nivadyate.
Yadrichalavasantushto dvandvatito vamatsara samasiddhav asiddhocha kritvapina nibhadyate.
Hare Krishna. Yadrachalabha santushto dvandvatito vimatsaraha samaha siddha asiddhau cha kritvapi na nibhadyate. Hare Krishna.
Yadrichalabha santushta dvandvatita vimatsaraha samasiddhau asiddhau cha kritvapi na nibhadyate. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, synonyms. Yadricha, out of its own accord. Labha, with gain. Santushtaha, satisfied. Dvandva, duality. Atita, surpassed. Vimatsaraha, free from envy. Samha, steady. Siddhau, in success. Asiddhau, failure. Cha, also. Kritva, doing. Api, although. Na, never. Nibhadyate, becomes affected. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Purport. A Krishna-conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with the gains which are obtained of their own accord. He never begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, or misery and happiness. A Krishna-conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way, I want to reread that. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and in failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. Om Agyanata Barandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlayatam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Swapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vanchakopatarubhischa Kripasindu Vievacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and in failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. So this is describing a very exalted devotee. As Srila Prabhupada states in the last sentence of the purport here, is a person who has fully understood and is fixed in transcendental knowledge. I want to give a little bit of context to this. And in order to do that, I want to go back because at first it could be a little bit overwhelming to us to hear about these exalted qualities. Now, we should know that these are all things that we should aspire for. These are the qualities that Krishna is asking us to attain. I'll get into that in just a moment. But let's bring it back to the context. And in order to do that, I want to refer back to text number 15 of this chapter. This is after Krishna has instructed Arjuna on the transcendental nature of his appearance and that why he comes into this world to deliver the devotees, to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. And he explains that if one understands the transcendental nature of my birth and my activities, if one becomes Krishna conscious, one does not have to, return to this world again, but attains Krishna's eternal abode. So we come to text 15, and Krishna tells Arjuna, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. And the verses that come after this, which is the one we're studying today, is all related in this context that Krishna is asking Arjuna to follow in the footsteps of the great souls who have attained perfection in life. Perfection in life, liberation from material bondage, and attachment to the transcendental nature, the soul's eternal transcendental nature of eternal service, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. And what are the characteristics that a person wants to know, that a person has that are of this transcendental nature? This Bhagavad-Gita is spoken to create a transformation within the heart, transformation within Arjuna's situation, but also our situation as hearers of the Bhagavad-Gita. Srila Prabhupada comments on this particular verse. He starts off by saying, he says, there are two classes of men. Some of them are full of polluted material things within their hearts, and some of them are materially free. So right there, two classes of people. And we hear about this through our study of the Bhagavad Gita, but there are those that are conditioned. That is us. We're here in this material world due to our desire to want to, as Srila Prabhupada says, lord it over material nature. We were envious of Krishna's position, and therefore Krishna created this material world for us to live out our projects, to help try to fulfill our desires, even though we'll never fully fulfill our desires in this material world. This material world was created for us to do so, and as well as to reform us. The frustration that comes about in trying to achieve and fulfill one's own desires that are self-motivated brings about a frustration. And by the mercy of the devotees of Krishna, they can lead us to the path to say, you don't actually have to go down this road any longer. This cycle of happiness and distress, frustration, endeavor, birth, death, old age, disease, this cycle of samsara that we're going through, there's a way out of it. So he says there's two classes of men, those that are materially attached and have polluted material things in their heart, and those that are materially free. Krishna consciousness is equally beneficial for both these persons. Those that are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for the gradual cleansing process by following the four regulative principles of devotional service. Those that are already cleansed by the impurities, they continue to act in Krishna consciousness, and they set the example for everyone to become benefited. So Krishna consciousness is the eternal nature of the soul. So Krishna consciousness is naturally beneficial even for those that have attained liberation. Unlike the processes of karma yoga, which you want to engage in your activities in the service of God simply to become free from the results of your activities, that only takes you up to the platform of liberation. Same thing with dhyana yoga, jnana yoga. But bhakti yoga is eternal and exists well beyond liberation. In fact, liberation is just the beginning stages, as explained in the Nectar of Devotion. One of the byproducts of devotional service, but it is not the goal of devotional service. Devotional service is to please the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. So Krishna is instructing Arjuna to follow in the footsteps by acting in a way of performing your duty in knowledge of Krishna. And if one is able to do that, then these characteristics will develop. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and in failure, that he doesn't become entangled, even though he is performing actions. Now, it is very natural for what Krishna is suggesting Arjuna to do, to follow in the footsteps of the great souls, even taking it down to a mundane level. The way to motivate, the way to encourage, the way to show this is what you can become is to give an example of a person who has come before you. When you walk into a school or a university, a college, when you first walk in, they usually have their Hall of Fame. So you're walking in there as a person who hasn't attended yet. But right away, you see that, wow, look at these famous people that have graduated from here. If I follow this process, I too can become famous. I took my son to these lessons for baseball. As soon as you walk in, they show that this person has gone on to play, professional. This person is got a scholarship to college. This person is going, and you think right away, if I get into this, I will also be able to advance. It's a form of showing this is what you can become. This is your potential. Many times in the Bhagavad-Gita, starting in the 2nd chapter, when Krishna when Arjuna asked Krishna, he says, please tell me the qualities, the characteristics of a person whose consciousness is merged in transcendence. How does he sit? How does he walk? How does he speak? What is his nature? What are these characteristics? What are these qualities? And by following the footsteps of these great souls, bringing it back to more of a spiritual perspective, when we're in contact with these great souls, we can understand that actually there is a much greater value to life than fulfilling our own selfish interest. Just being in the presence of these very elevated, mature devotees, we have the ability to just naturally become detached. All the things that in our life that seem so important, all of a sudden seem so insignificant because we're in contact with somebody who's in contact with Krishna. And we see the beauty of devotional service play out. We see a person whose faith is such that they're dependent on Krishna. They're not worried, how's this going to happen? How's that going to happen? How will this arrangement be made or that arrangement be made? They understand Krishna is ultimately in control. I am serving Krishna, and Krishna will ultimately provide. This particular example, but that doesn't mean that that person doesn't do anything. And that is the nuance of devotional service. Acting in a way which is motivated for the pleasure of serving and pleasing Krishna, but not selfishly motivated to fulfill one's own desires. The example that is given of the devotee who this verse exemplifies is Madhavendra Puri. So a person does not make, Srila Prabhupada says, a person who does not make much endeavor even to maintain his own body. He neither begs nor borrows. So Madhavendra Puri is one of the greatest acharyas in our line. He is the spiritual master of Ishwara Puri, and Ishwara Puri is the spiritual master of the Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Madhavendra Puri was the first to bring in the mood of devotional service in Vipralamba Seva, service and separation, as the highest form of experiencing ecstasy in service of the Supreme Lord. Feelings that were felt only by Srimati Radharani and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were also felt by Sripad Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri, he was so renounced that when he arrived in Vrindavan, in Braj, he circumambulated Govardhan Hill. He sat down at Govindakund underneath a tree, and he was fasting. He was performing what is called Madhukari. Madhukari is that, you don't accept anything. You don't make any endeavor to get anything for your own sustenance. If somebody happens to bring you something, you take it. If no one brings you something for that day, then you fast. Again, a very high elevated position. So attracted by the devotion of Madhavendra Puri, because his mind, his consciousness was completely merged in the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And as he was sitting down, a boy came along and delivered him a pot of milk. And the boy said, who are you, and why are you here, and why are you fasting? Madhavendra Puri, he said, and then the boy said, in my village, no one fasts. It's okay to beg, but if you're going to fast, my service is to come around and provide you with some milk to drink. And he said, well, how did you know? Madhavendra Puri said, how did you know I was fasting? He said, there were some ladies that were around here, picking up some water and they observed you that you were fasting, and they notified me. So I came out and I performed my service to the saints. He says, I'll be back in a little bit, please. I need to collect the pot. Madhavendra Puri's consciousness became absorbed in this boy. Who is this? How did he really know what was going on in my head? So he waited patiently for the boy to return, but he didn't return. That night, Madhavendra Puri fell asleep underneath the tree at Govindakund. And in that dream, that boy came back to him. And he says, I want to take you to a place. And he took him into the jungle. And he says, I've been hidden in this jungle for quite a while. I was put here during an during an invasion. And I was put here for safekeeping. But now, due to the cold and the heat and the rain, I need to be, I've been waiting for you to come to uncover me and then install me at the top of Govardhan Hill. My name is Gopal. Tomorrow, please assemble a team of people to come and rescue me. Madhavendra Puri woke up, and now his meditation had turned into action. He had to now arrange and manage this group of people, go into the town, explain to individuals, this is what happened. And then they went into the jungle and chopped down, all the brush, uncovered this beautiful Gopal deity, which was resting in the earth. And then under the direction, through the dream, Gopal explained how to perform the installation and how to perform. And so the installation went on. And all along, Madhavendra Puri is orchestrating and organizing these activities. He was doing it purely under the direction and instruction of the Supreme Lord for the pleasure of the Lord. He was not keeping anything for himself. He was laboring, but that labor was completely pure because it was completely, everything he was doing was given fully in consciousness and externally in the service of Lord Krishna. They performed this Anukut ceremony, which we still celebrate today during Govardhan Puja, where they brought all different varieties of grains and sweets and the abhishek that they performed, and said that Madhavendra Puri personally performed the abhishek. And after and developed the worship of Gopal on Govardhan Hill. And then he had another dream where Gopal said, it can get a little bit hot up here, and therefore I'm desiring that you go and get me some sandalwood from a special place. So Madhavendra Puri, he took this instruction and he traveled. And along the travel, he had to orchestrate so many different things. But he went as a personal instruction from the Supreme Lord to purchase some sandalwood that can be offered to Gopal. While he was staying in a town called Ramuna, it was very famous Gopinath deity that was there. And he heard that the kheer that was offered to the deities was exceptional, the best in the world. So naturally he said, I would like to learn how to make this. If I could just taste a little bit of it, then I could understand how to make it and I could offer it to Gopal. The deity understanding the desire of the pure devotee, understanding how materially detached and spiritually attached Madhavendra Puri was. The deity actually set aside, he stole some of that of the offering and put it aside and hid it for Madhavendra Puri. Every day, several times a day, at least three times a day, We offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we offer intermediate sweet times as well. During a 4 o'clock offering, we get sweets and fruit, and the breakfast time, or before Mangalartik, they get Mangalartik sweets. So five times a day, the deities get sweets and fed different elements, different boga, their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then when we take it back, we clean the plates, and the devotees then distribute it as Krishna Prasadam. Very rarely do you go up in a situation like this where Gopinath actually put aside something and hid it for his devotee. And that night, the Pujari, who knew that something was wrong because he knew he put it up there and it was no longer there, and he was wondering what happened. Gopinath came to him in a dream and said, I stole this. I put this aside, and I want you to go deliver it to Madhavendra Puri, who is my pure devotee. And he wants to be able to relish this in order to make it for his Gopal deity. So this is the consciousness, and this is the reciprocation of the Lord with a person who has no desire but to serve the Lord. Now, the renunciation of Madhavendra Puri, Madhukari, is like I said, is the most exalted position. And we should take inspiration from this. We should take joy in hearing this pastimes, because this is a devotee on the exalted platform. Hearing about pure devotional service cleanses our heart and brings joy to us. But it also allows us to see what are the qualities of those who have achieved perfection on this process. And we may be at the beginning stages of performing devotional service, following the 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds, acting with Vaishnava behavior and etiquette, coming to the temple, rendering service at the temple. And sometimes we have to force ourselves to do these things. They don't naturally come up. But when we think, going through this process, as I become cleansed, as I get the association of great souls who can inform me about the secrets of devotional service, as I merge myself into the consciousness that Krishna is presenting in the Bhagavad-Gita, I can see that, by the mercy of these great souls, I can too become free from these desires which inhibit me. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter that these desires are stumbling blocks. Attachment, aversion, these are stumbling blocks. And they're to purify us from these stumbling blocks, we have to follow the principles of devotional life to regulate our attachment and aversion. And when we're able to do this, we can help clear the path to self-realization. Bhagavad-Gita 3:34. Krishna does not project or instruct Arjuna to perform premature renunciation. In fact, the 4th verse of the 3rd chapter, Krishna says just the opposite. He starts off by saying, not by abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one achieve perfection. He says, one who restrains his senses of action, but whose mind dwells on the sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So premature renunciation, and that is explained as we try to externally give something up for our own benefit. We understand that there's some benefit to giving up those things that we become attached to. Those attachments bind us to this world, affect our mind. That if we're not ready to give that up, our minds will dwell on them and then it will be this internal conflict that goes on. We'll find other ways, and we'll become very frustrated to live them out. And we may see this in our own lives, or examples of devotees in the past that have explained this, that they become very rigorous in their renunciation and trying to give up and control different aspects of the body, whether it's through minimal sleep or eating a certain way that they weren't quite ready for. And it agitated other parts. It threw off an imbalance within their body. But what Krishna does recommend is developing what he says is a higher taste. That if we substitute the lower desires for the higher desires of serving Krishna, then we can actually become satisfied and well situated in Krishna consciousness. If you have something and you're holding it in your hands and you give it up, then you become empty-handed. And naturally, you're looking for something to occupy yourself with. But if you give up a lower desire, but your hands are then become filled because you've taken on something better, then you remain satisfied. So Arjuna, he had wanted to renounce his duty. He says, better that I head off into the forest. First he says, better that I be killed. Just let them kill me and I don't have to go through this. I don't have to make a decision. Let them have the kingdom. Better I just lay down and let them kill me. And then he says, and then again he comes and says, better I live by begging. I go into the forest. And Arjuna says, no, because that was a material desire, even though it seemed very selfless. Right? Wow, he's willing to give up his, happiness so somebody else could benefit from that happiness. But he was doing that to help himself, because that's what would have made his life happier and more convenient. So he thought. So Krishna is instructing Arjuna constantly throughout this Bhagavad-Gita on how do you perform your duty, how do you remain detached, and how do you remain steady in both success and failure? How do you remain unentangled? At the same time, performing your actions with full commitment. So in many ways, we are like Arjuna in this sense. We look at our lives and the intimidation that could be there with looking at a great soul like Madhavendra Puri. We should see it as inspiration, but it may not be very relatable to us. But what is relatable, what we can, I think, take from it is that when we look at our lives and we see that, do I envy? And where does that envy come from? When I see somebody that has a belonging that you may want, do you envy after that? Or does somebody who has a position that you feel that you may deserve or want, how do you react to such? Envy comes from wanting something that is not yours. Now, you can look at it from a social perspective and say, envy is not good. It doesn't create good relationships. It's not a good look, to be envious. Envious, you try to cut somebody down behind their back, they have something, you want to diminish it. From the spiritual perspective, though, when you look at what envy is, it's very strong, intense material desire. And those material desires are what bind us to this world and separate us from Krishna. So when we get to the root of it, that we are eternal Krishna conscious beings, and the fulfillment of material desires will not make us happy. It will only make us more hungry for material desires. And when we understand that, we can understand envy, not from just the social context, but how it is the killer of the soul. And as explained earlier, it is the root cause of why we are here in this material world and suffering to begin with. From a more practical side of things, we can look and see how we can become satisfied by things that come to us of our own accord. We live in a world that tells us, if you acquire these particular objects, you will become happy. Even if you can't afford them, find a way to afford them. Work harder. Take on debt. Borrow money. And when we do that, what does it do? It creates anxiety within us. It comes frustration. Now, okay, now I got what I wanted. I got the car that I wanted, or I got the clothes that I wanted. I got that great house that I wanted, that I knew I couldn't afford, but I got it anyway. I'm living outside of my means. We may have been there. We may be there. It's very natural because this is the material world. This is what the material world tells us. This is the way the material world tells us to behave. Billboards, commercials. You walk into a mattress store and they say, right away, they take you to the most expensive mattress. They'll tell you, do you drive a Cadillac? You say, no, I can't afford a Cadillac. And they say, well, if you can't afford a Cadillac, you can at least have the Cadillac of beds. And you start thinking, no, I can't have a Cadillac, but he said, I really can't afford that. Well, I'm going to show you how you can afford that. We have this wonderful financing plan, and they're there to hook you in. The mind starts thinking, I would like to enjoy this. The intelligence, which gets covered by the mind, in the way in the background saying, you can't afford it. You're going to be paying this off for years, and you need to spend that money elsewhere. So by looking at our lives and understanding that, are we living within our means? Do we trust Krishna to provide for the things that we need? And we can become happy because we are situated in his service. Srila Prabhupada says here that he does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service to Krishna. You know, the majority of us, most of us have employment somewhere. Whatever it is, we range in all different types of occupations. Sometimes an opportunity comes about for us in an occupation, which may be a promotion, it may be more money. And we start thinking, well, this gives me more security. But the trade-off is that I'm going to be further away from devotees. I'm not going to have as much time for devotional life. It's going to impact my sadhana. And there's a conflict. Here, Krishna tells us, again, something very relatable, that don't let any of those decisions hamper your devotional service to Krishna. Have faith that Krishna will fulfill anything that is required for you. And I've seen the practical examples of this, where devotees have basically become detached from the spiritual society and have run into really hard times because they've chased after opportunities for material success. And although they found maybe some material success, they didn't find happiness because they felt that they found that they were further and further away from devotees, further away from service. And now they just lament, oh, I can't wait until I get an opportunity to come back to the temple and make garlands for the deities, or be in the association of devotees, or have prasadam, or chant with devotees. So we have to make our decisions very carefully. Material situations, material prosperity should not be for the devotee who is trying to become Krishna conscious in this life, should not be the number one reason for in your decision-making process. Consult more senior devotees. Consult your spiritual master if you have a guru about these decisions. And gradually, as we go through this process of purification in this life, we'll start to see that actually these qualities that are being spoken of by Lord Krishna, and although they are very exalted, we will find them start to manifest in our lives. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And I'd like to open it up. If there's any comments, questions, anything that is relatable by any of the devotees that you would like to share, we can do so now. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Mitravinda Devi Dasi, you have your hand up?
Yes. Thanks, first of all, for giving this reading of this spiritual nectar that is for the benefit of everyone. My question regards the goal, or what I perceived in your commentary as an aspiration regarding detachment. So in any spiritual path, there's connection. And on the path of bhakti, which is the essence of what we're doing as aspiring Vaishnavas in the non-sectarian foundation of God consciousness, it's very personal and sacred, and definitely not in any level considered impersonal or robotic or disconnected from the heart function, or how we should be relating to one another. Would you please relay this aspect of detachment from a way that relates to bhakti, and is it actually the goal?
Detachment is a principle in devotional service. So we detach ourselves from those things that pull us away from Krishna, and we attach ourselves to those things that bring us to Krishna. All the rules and regulations, they all stem from these two principles. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. So the challenge is, when we leave it up to our own minds to determine what it is that I should be attached to and what is those things I should renounce, oftentimes we find ourselves in trouble, because the mind is the unpurified mind. And we are trying to purify our minds and our consciousness by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, performing devotional service, and hearing Krishna's words. We have to hear from authority, the spiritual master and advanced devotees. And they can show us how to properly, given specific situations in our life, how to detach. But renunciation is not the goal. Pure devotional service is the goal. At the same time, one cannot practice pure devotional service if one is still filled with material desires. So those material desires will go as one fills. You know, you'll lose the desire for the lower taste when you accept a higher taste. So the process of Krishna consciousness fills you with devotional service, if you accept it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't principles of renunciation that one has to go through. So following the regulative principles. So there's, renunciation of eating meat, renunciation of illicit sex, renunciation of intoxications, and renunciation of gambling, and renunciation of just trying to enjoy in this material world as much as you can. Now, if a person does that, but they do not take on any other activity, then you'll find yourself in the position of impersonalism, because you won't have anything to do. You'll become bored, and then naturally you'll start to take on. You'll reclaim those things that you've tried to renounce. So, devotional service. The renunciation is not the goal of devotional service. It is part of the process. It is a principle that is there. Does that answer the question?
It answers part of it. I was just addressing in your discourse the reference to detachment. And in many ways, as our Guru, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami, my Guru, has said before, these aspects of detachment that relate to people prematurely or in ways that don't actually relate to being personal or bhakti, which is love, and this aspect of bhakti yoga being the yoga of emotion and relationship, being misconstrued in certain ways or misunderstood. When one takes a vow, then that person is expected to hold to that vow. It's not something that we let go of or change because of will. So right. in that regard, regarding detachment, and as it's spoken in Bhagavad-Gita, at the end of Bhagavad-Gita, it gives reference to certain things that should be done and not detached from. And I was just reflecting on that. Thank you for your response.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any other devotees that would like to share? Any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you, Dronacarya Prabhu, for a very thoughtful, enlivening class and reminding about Madhavendra Puri, our root, the mode which we inherit is from parampara. That to the degree we connected to that parampara, to the same degree we will inherit those mode. It's very important. It's good, wonderful. We are connected to Krishna, and we are connected to Brahma. We are connected to Vyasa, but we are connected to Madhavendra Puri's mode. Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
We can see how Krishna reciprocates. He with a devotee who is fully dependent on Krishna. In this world, we yearn for pleasure and we try to avoid distress. And that is the mind trying to drive us to try to find happiness. But we can see from these pure devotees, a person is on the level of pure devotional service. That is not their drive, that is not their motivation. And therefore they're equal in both success and failure, because they're not trying to avoid something and achieve something else. They're simply just trying to please Krishna. And naturally they know in this material world, happiness and distress, they're two sides of the same coin. Sometimes it will work out, sometimes it may not work out, but I'm leaving that up to Krishna. I'm going to endeavor to the best of my ability to try to please Krishna with everything that I have. Let Krishna take care of the rest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else before we conclude? Okay, thank you all so much for tuning in today to hear this message of Lord Krishna from the Bhagavad-Gita and Srila Prabhupada. We are going to reevaluate our situation as far as the temple being closed for the Sunday program sometime toward the end of next week, and we'll inform everybody through the newsletter what things look like. Again, we're eager to open up the temple and have people back again, but your safety is our primary concern. So we want to do it in a way that's responsible and done at the right time. Still, the numbers are very, very high in the Philadelphia area. And we pray for all those devotees out there in our community and congregation, as well as outside that, are suffering from, COVID. We pray that, they get better, soon. We just want to make sure everybody remains safe as possible. Here at the temple, the devotees are doing well. The service to the Lord is continuing every day. Very thankful to all the devotees that make garlands. They're continuing their service, bringing garlands to the Lord every day. The pujaris that come even from the outside have taken it very seriously. to come and continue their service in dressing the deities and doing the other forms of deity service. So we're doing our best to try to keep everything safe. So your cooperation is very much appreciated. And these online classes, although they're not true surrogates for being, in touch in person with each other, still we can be thankful that we have this, to be able to communicate and associate with each other through. Every morning, you can join us at 7:50 for our Srimad Bhagavatam class on the same Zoom channel. And then at Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have Bhagavad-Gita from 5 o'clock to 5:30. Tuesday night from 8 to 9. We just moved it from 7 to 8 to 8 to 9. We're reading Our Family Business. We only have a couple more weeks left. So if you have been following that series, please stay with us as we come to the conclusion of that. That's on Tuesday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Thursday, we have Srila Prabhupada Leela night. First, we have from 6:40 to 7. There is the recitation of Slokas. So those that want to learn how to pronounce Sanskrit and the meaning, pronunciation, as well as the translation, memorize verses. We have that from 6:40 to 7, and then 7 to 8. We read about the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. Currently, we're reading from Giriraj Swami's book, I'll Build You a Temple, which talks about Srila Prabhupada's Juhu temple that was constructed and all that went into that very glorious pastime. So that's 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Please tune into that. Again, I'd like to thank everybody. The temple will be open for Darshan, actually starting now. Anybody that wants to come and take Darshan, you can. No assembly, no sitting for the programs, but if you want to see the Lord, you can. Those that have milk from Gita Nagari that you ordered can come by and pick it up. And a couple things upcoming, I'll just mention briefly. Actually, this is more of a Sunday school announcement. I'll let Shobha Radhe mention it in the newsletter for next week. So I don't think this applies to many of us that are on here. Okay. Any questions on what I'd said? Any about the temple and status and opening and coming? Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, what's happening in Delaware? Krishna Kirtan is the president down in Krishna Village in Delaware. Many of you know. How are you guys conducting yourselves? You're on mute, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Sorry, you asking me?
Yeah, no, I was asking, how are things in Delaware with the devotees there, and what are your programs like?
Delaware is many of us went the infection and everybody recovered. So, but small scale devotees are doing at this time well, but small scale we are still continuing the program to keep our spirits connected. So most of the things are online, but still with small number of devotees we still do the program actually. Considering everybody is safe, they are not sick. But yeah, we are not fully and promoting that to come. We try our best to most of the online programs.
Yeah, and this is common. I just want to let everybody know that we're basically sharing the same experience with Delaware, but Baltimore Temple, Potomac Temple, the New Jersey temples, they're all going through the same thing where they've done this temporary shutdown. Also churches nearby, they've also, a lot of them, not all of them, but many of them have also gone through the same situation that we're doing and having just virtual services for right now. So again, we hope that this doesn't last very long, but we're definitely here, and I'm just to encourage everybody to stay together and stay connected. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha.
Namo Namah.